Ayin Tes Samad Aleph. We'll begin Ayin Ches Samad Beis, 3 lines from the bottom of the 2 dots. Maliov. The Mishnah said that if you have a charitz between the 2 chatzeres, you have a ditch between the 2 chatzeres, the ditch is a barrier. So therefore, they're ma'arv and shnayim ve'ein ma'arv mecha. They can't join together because they have the barrier between them. But if it was filled with earth, it was filled with ofar, and it was filled with ofar and tzroiris or pebbles, then that seals it up, and then they are considered to be one ma'arv mechad ve'ein ma'arv shnayim. Dr. Gemara malei ofar va'afilu b'stoma. You mean to say that even without an express intention, if it was filled over there and he did not have an intention to leave it there permanently, we say that min hastam, we consider it that it's going to remain there permanently. It's considered to be joined together, and therefore marvin echad. We learned in the Mishnah, if you have a house, the house was filled with tevin, with straw, tzroiris, or pebbles, ubitlo, bottle. If you're mevatel it, you have an express declaration that you're mevatel it, then it's bottle. Bitla in, loy bitla, loy. It's only if you're mevatel it beferish, but otherwise it's not bottle. So what is the case over there? The issue over there is you have a house. Now normally a house, it's an oihel. If there's a mess in the house, then what is on top of it, on the roof or above it, is not mekabel tuma because the gag is chaitzet, it's a chatzitza. However, that's only if there is a space of at least peseach tefach. Then we say it's an oil, and it is chaitzitz, it separates between what's above and what's below. And then the tumah does not rise above. However, if there is not a space of a tefach or more, then it's considered tumah retzutza, and the tumah goes straight up, and there's no chatzitza. So if he has the house and he filled it with the pebbles, then it would be considered to be a sealed house, and therefore it will not be mafsik, it will not be chaitzitz for the tumah. But when do we say that it's considered to be a sealed house, that it's filled and there is no space, there's no cavity over there? That's only if he's beferish, he's bevatel it beferish. Then we say it's intended to remain there, it's sealed up, it's closed up, and there's no cavity, there's no oil. But it's only if you're mevatel. So bitl in, loy bitl loy. So over here we're saying min hastam, even without being mevatel it, the tzroiris seal up, close up the ditch between the 2 chatzeres. Amrav Hunaman Tana Oiles Rav Yosi says it's a machlokes tanoi. And who's the Tana of Oiles that says you need an express kavana? That's Rav Yosi. Rav Yosi says you need a kavana. But our Tana argues with Rav Yosi, and he holds that even menastam. Frankly, Gemara, Rav Yosi, Bashamin Alai would mean we see the sheet of Rav Yosi is the opposite. The sign we learned in a brayso, Rav Yosi, Limer Tevin, Vein Asalif Naisai. If you have Tevin, the straw, and you know that he does not intend to remove it from there, we know that it's not minastam. So Harek is stam offer, we treat it like stam offer or bottle. Now, you see clearly, Rav Yosi holds that stam offer is bottle, and continues and say offer v'asel if nice if you have offer, you have the dirt, but when we know that he wants to remove it, so it's not minastam. Harei stam teven v'loy bottle. It's like stam teven, which is not bottle. But you see, al kol panim, you see over here the shita of Rav Yosi that he holds that stam offer is bottle. Hello, the Gemara says, Alama Ravasi, Mantana Eruvin Rav Yosi. And Chanami, it's just the opposite way. Who is the Tana of Eruvin? Our Tana that says, offer min hastam is bottle. That's Rav Yosi. The Mishnah in Oyalais that says, it's not minastam, it's not bottle, only if you're mevatel it, bitla in, loy bitla loy. That's the Tana that argues on Rav Yosi. Rav Huna Rav Yeshua Amar, he says, it's not a kasha to begin with. Tuma on Shabbos karamis. You're asking me a kasha, tuma on Shabbos? They're fundamentally different. Hanach Yisur Shabbos, dafil araki, nama vatal inchi. And so he says, Shabbos is different, that even if it would be a purse, a wallet, mevatel inish, a person would be mevatel of a meaning. Something which is muksa, you can't remove it for the entire day of Shabbos, like a wallet, it's batel. So therefore, he's not going to remove it for the entire day. And therefore, minastam, it's batel. The offer as well is muksa. So he's not going to remove it. So over here we say, legabe Shabbos, we say that minastam is batel. But legabe the din of Tuma, by case of the bias, it's not muksa. Muksa is not relevant. He may or may not remove it. So therefore, you don't have a guaranteed period of time where you have it's frozen, where it's not going to be removed. So therefore, over there, you require a bittul. Rav Ashi Omer, he says, given there, it's a different chiluk. Rav Ashi Omer, Abais a charitz karomitz. You're asking me kash from a house to a charitz, meaning the previous chiluk was Shabbos and Bais. Over here, the chiluk is not even in the halachas of Shabbos and Tuma, but it's in the physical nature of the two cases. You're asking me a kash from a house to this case of a ditch? Bishlom a charitz limit ma'ikon. A charitz, now it's a ditch, is there, it's there to be in the normal course of events, it's going to be filled up. You have a field, you have a chotzer. In a chotzer, people use the chotzer. So we're not talking about an irrigation ditch or anything of that nature. We're talking about a chotzer. A chotzer, you want to use the area. A ditch is an impediment. So the norm is that you're going to seal it up and fill it up. Therefore, if you fill it with offer, even without a bittul minastam, it's batel. But a house, you're going to fill it with earth, or you're going to fill it with pebbles. A house is used for living, not to fill it up. So therefore, over there, you need davke a bittul, an express bittul, not minastam. So you can't compare the two cases. Nosan alav neser sharoichav dalin. The Mishnah said that if you have two chatzers, there's a ditch between them. So the ditch separates the two, but if you put a board, which is 4 wide, to put it across, the covering over the ditch, so that it serves as a bridge. It serves as a bridge between the two chatzeres. You have a walkway over the two chatzeres. Then you have an option. You can be marvin shnaim, or if you want, you can be marvin echad. That's only when he places the board across the width of the ditch. Aval the arka, but he puts it along the length, avil kol shunami, shoremit midalit. But if he places it over the length of it, then it does not have to be 4 wide. Then even a kol shun, even a little bit, because then it will lessen the gap. The gap will be less than dalit. So we're talking about where the charitz, where you have a charitz between the two chatzeres. And the charitz is 4 wide. So this serves as separation between the two chatzeres. So therefore, you say that they can't be ma'arav together unless you have the board that you place that's 4 wide, that you have a bridge that you can cross over. However, you only need this width of 4 if you're serving it as a bridge this way. If you put it along the length of it, then even if it's just a minimal amount, that will minimize the distance. This will no longer be 4. And if the ditch doesn't have a width of 4, it's not a separation. It doesn't separate the two chatzeres. If you have the ditch, which is 4 wide, it runs along the length of the chatzeres, it separates the two chatzeres. So they can't be ma'arav together. In order to be ma'arav together, you have to have a bridge. So let's assume that this is 4 wide. You have a bridge across the two, you join the two together, and therefore you can be ma'arav together. But you only need this width of 4, you only need a width of 4 if you're placing the board this way. If you're placing the board this way, you don't need such a wide board. Even if it only has this minimal width, It's also sufficient because then it will reduce the width of the charitz, and you don't have a charitz which constitutes a separation between the two, because the charitz only separates between the two if it's 4 wide. If it's not 4 wide, then this isn't a separation. It's not a separation between the two. So therefore, if the board is even a minimal of width over here, but if you put it in this direction, then your gap over here is less than 4. If your gap is less than 4, it's not a separation. So you only need the width of 4 if you place it this way. But if you place it lengthway, it's not necessary. See right in the Gemara. And we have a similar din by 2 balconies. If you have 2 balconies that are opposite each other in Rishus Harabim, the 2 balconies are separate, and they can't, from one to the other, it can't be carried, thrown from one to the other. But if you put a board over there, it's a bridge, and it joins it together, and they can be ma'arav together. Similarly, the board has to be, just like in the case of the charitz, and has to be wide 4 tvachim. Now it stresses in the Mishnah that they have to be opposite each other. But if it's not opposite each other, then this would not be the same thing. And the same applies to the height. So they have to be opposite each other. If they're pulled away from each other, they're not opposite each other, or one is higher or lower than the other, this din would not apply. Now this qualification, it applies only loy amran el sheish bein zel lezeh shleish tvachim. Only if the difference between them is 3 tvachim, whether it's in the across each other or in the height, whether in the width or the height of ein bein zel lezeh shleish tvachim zus rakum. But if the discrepancy is not 3 tvachim or more, then it's not a factor, because we just say it's considered exusra, just a crooked balcony, and therefore it does have access one to the other. So for instance, if you have the balconies, so if they're opposite each other, then you can put a bridge this way. If they're opposite each other, you put the board and it's a bridge. But if they're pulled away from each other, so that you have to put the bridge on an angle, that is leinichat hashmishtei, and therefore we'd say that it's not considered a valid bridge between them, and it does not join them together. But that's only if the discrepancy is 3 more tefachim. Otherwise, if it's slightly crooked, if it's somewhat on an angle, and it's not 3 tvachim or more, then we say it's a gzusra kum, it's just a crooked balcony. The same thing with the height. It's only if you have to make this way, if the plank has to come up like that. But if it's within 3 tvachim, it's just an incline, and we say that it's still considered usable, and therefore you could be ma'arav, it joins them together, you could be ma'arav together. Zok the Mishnah, matven shebin shtei chatzeres, so we have a haystack between 2 chatzeres, so similarly the haystack, it separates between the 2 chatzeres. So it's a gavay asara tefachim, if it's 10 tefachim high, marvin shnaim, it separates them, they have to be ma'arav independently, not together. Ve'ein marvin echad, and they cannot join together. Now they're considered to be 2 separate chatzeres. So this is a haystack, and this is what's used for animal fodder. The animals eat it. The one side of the chatzer, they can feed their animals from the one side. They can bring it to eat from that's on their side. So we say that and the ones on the other side, they can have their animals eat from this side of it. But if the haystack, now it got diminished, and now it's lower than 10 tvachim, there's no separation between the 2 chatzeres, they're marvin echad, they marvin shnayim, but they can't, there's nothing joining them together, So there is nothing separating them, rather. There's nothing separating the two. They're considered joined together. They're considered to be one chotzer, ve'ein ma'arim shnaim. And they cannot be ma'arim independently because there's no partition between them. It's considered to be as one chotzer. When we say that the animals are allowed to eat from each side of the chotzer, they're allowed to eat from the haystack, but you can't take the hay and put it in the basket to feed the animals. You can't do that because we're afraid that he might take too much. So Rashi has two pshatim. One pshat is that we're afraid that he'll take too much of it, it'll diminish the haystack, and then it won't be 10 high. Now, they were ma'arev separately. They didn't join together with the air of on the hanacha that they have a partition, that it was 10 high. If you're going to feed the animal and you're going to take from it, we're afraid that it will diminish the height of it. He won't realize that it's not 10 high, that there's no partition, and therefore they'll continue to carry, which is also. Now, if the animals eat on their own, they're not going to, we don't have such a chashash because generally they don't eat so much. But if a person feeds it, if he gives it more, and we're afraid that he'll take too much, he'll bring down from the height, he'll diminish the partition, and therefore they won't realize that there's no partition over here and that they can't carry. Rashi's second pshat is that it's a muksa consideration. You can't pick it up and take it because it's muksa. And the Rishonim are all bothered, but why is it muksa? It's animal fodder. So what makes it muksa? Why? So according to the same pshat of Rashi, you can't do it biyad. You can take the animal, lead the animal there, but you can't take it by hand because it's muksa. Why is it muksa? It's animal fodder. So the Rashba says because you designate it to be your partition for the chatzeiros, it's a partition for the chatzeiros, and therefore we treat it as being muksa. The Rashba said, the Rosh rather says, is that since you designated it to be a machitza, it's a partition between the chatzeiros, it's not a muksa consideration per se, but then it becomes a problem is like an oil because we treat it as an oil, and you're now being soiser, you're demolishing this oil. Since you're using it for a partition, it has a din of a partition. Tearing it down, removing it, taken by hand, is being soiser. You're demolishing this oil, this partition. Now you're saying you can't feed the animal by hand, you can't take the fodder, the tevet, and put it in the basket. But you mean to say that you can lead the animal and have it stand right over to eat? You can let your animal graze over grass that's growing on Shabbos, because we're not afraid that he's going to pull out the grass and give it to his animal. He knows that it's a malach of kaitzer, so he can lead his animal onto the grass to graze over there. We're not concerned he's going to pull out the grass. But he can't lead the animal muksa because we're afraid it's not a nisr deraisa, it's nisr derabanan. We're afraid he might do it by hand. He might pick it up by hand. So what over here, if we're dealing with an isser derabanan, then it should be also to do it by hand, because to lead him there rather, because we should be concerned that he'll pick it up in his hand and take it to him. Now, whether the isser over here is an isser derabanan, that he might take too much and now diminish the size of the machitza, whether it's that it's muksa, whether it's nirek, it appears like he's being seiser and oil, but it's an isser derabanan over here. So therefore, how can you lead the animal to this spot, to the haystack? How can you lead him to graze? Why aren't we concerned that you'll take it by hand and feed it to him? We see by a deraisa, we're not concerned. you can lead the animal to growing grass. But where the Isra picking it up is the Rabbanon, you can't even lead the animal to that spot. The Gemara says, the in the Chanami, what we're talking about is you don't lead it to the spot, you just block its way from going anywhere else, so Mamela, it will follow, it will go in that direction, and then eat on its own. The Rav Huna said that you can't put the food, you can't put the straw in the basket. I'll ask you a kasha. Tanya will learn the brisa by shebein shtei chatzeres. If you have a house between two chatzeres, malayo teven, it's filled with the straw. Ma'arvin shnayim ve'ein ma'arvin echad. There's a separation between the two. It's considered a mechitza between the two, and therefore they have to make independent eruvim. They cannot join together in an eruv. Zeh noisel l'seh kupasa v'yachel, v'zeh noisel l'seh kupasa v'yachel, and it says that each one can put in the basket and feed it to their animal. Nismai tatevim yotfochim, but if the height of the haystack or the straw was less than 10 tvachim, shnei masurim, then they're both also, because there's no separation between the two, and they would have to join together in one eruv. So what should he do if this occurs? He locks his door, and he's mevatel reshus, who also v'chaver muter. So if he has the house, there's a chatzer leading in, opening to the house, to the house in the middle on one side, and there's another one on the other side. There's doors on each side. Now, if they have straw that's in the middle and it fills it up, if it's mole, then that's considered a separation. If the height of it is diminished, then the doors are open on both sides, then they would have to join together in an area because they're connected. What do you do? What's the eight? So one of them has to lock the door. He has no access. He's mevatel his rishus to the other one. The other one now has the access, and the chaver is a muter. And you say the same thing of a pit of straw that is between the two tchumim of the cities on Shabbos. That it would be the same halacha, that if you have this in the middle, this teven in the middle. Now there's one city here, there's another city here. This pile is in the middle of the tchumim, so therefore this city can reach this edge of the teven. It's within their tchum, but not that end. They can reach this end. This city over here can reach this end of it, but not that end. The tchum falls somewhere over here, somewhere in the middle. So each one has access only to one side of it, because only that side is within their alpai mama, within their tchum. So each one can eat from each side of it, not from the other side, but on the side that's within their tchum. But however, but in any event, it says that each one can take from the teven, put it in the basket. Isn't that a kasha and Rav Huna? Amri bias, the house is different. The case of the house is different because the house came in the ikamachitzas v'tikra. There's a ceiling, so it's an enclosed area. So therefore, if the height of it is going to be diminished and is going to get lower, you'll recognize it. There's a roof. So that if the height of the stack comes down, you'll see the gap. You'll see it's coming down. For chayshish, that maybe if they're going to take from the teven and put it in the basket, they'll take too much and reduce the height. Well, that's a concern in an open area. But when you have a ceiling, you'll see that there's a gap that is coming down. They'll recognize that that's the case, and they'll stop carrying, so we don't have that concern. According to the pshat, that it's muktzah, or that you bring seiser and oyel. So according to those pshatim, what we'll say is that he's only designating the lower part of it as being a mechitza. Only needs 10 tefachim. The part that is higher than 10 tefachim is not designated as a mechitza, and therefore there's no problem of now it's not ruining the mechitza, and therefore it's not muksa, and therefore there's no slicer of an oil. He's only designating the bottom part. And the top part, it will be clear that which is the top part, which is the bottom, because you'll see what's closer to the ceiling is the top part. So we'll only take the very top part, and once it gets further down, he'll know not to take anymore. So therefore, there's no problem. But over here, it's loy minkra. That's why over here it's also, if it's within a house, it's not. But over here in an open area, it is also.